always thought I understood the feeling of losing something important, until the night I realized I had lost something I never actually had. And before I begin, I know this might sound silly, but moments like this remind me of something I told my best friend once. Nothing hurts as much as expecting something beautiful and receiving a wound instead. At the time, it was just a dramatic comment over coffee. Now it feels like a prophecy I accidentally wrote for myself. My name is Emily, and for most of my life, I've been the kind of person who romanticizes everything. Conversations, glances, tiny gestures. Maybe that's why falling in love with Daniel felt so natural. Like slipping into a story I thought I already knew the ending of. I met him at a local bookstore on a rainy Thursday. Funny enough, I wasn't even supposed to be there. I had forgotten my umbrella, and the storm was too violent to run to my car, so I ducked into the shop to wait it out. He was holding a torn copy of an old romance novel I loved. I made some awkward comment about it, he laughed, and somehow that tiny moment spiraled into something much bigger. In the early days, everything between us felt impossibly easy. He had this warm voice that made my chest feel calm, even on days when the world was too loud. His hands were soft, always slightly warm, as though he carried sunlight under the skin. And there was this way he looked at me like he could hear every word I didn't speak. I think that was what truly ruined me. That sense of being seen. His smile. God. I still remember how it felt to watch it form, slow, gentle, almost shy. It made me believe that kind men still existed, that maybe love didn't have to hurt to be real. I remember our first coffee date, how he told me he didn't believe in rushing things. And I believed him. Maybe that was my first mistake, trusting someone who spoke with that kind of conviction. Over the months, we became inseparable. We spent weekends wandering parks, talking about absurd things like what animals we resembled or how we imagined our older selves would be. He always joked he'd be a grumpy old man complaining about everything. I'd pretend to be offended and tell him I'd be too fabulous to age. He'd laugh and say, "Good. Stay fabulous. I'll need that brightness when I get annoying." Looking back, maybe I should have seen the cracks. The moments when he'd turn his phone face down, the distracted pauses, the lingering shadows in his eyes when I asked about certain parts of his life. But love does something strange to the brain. It makes red flags look like rose petals. It makes you soften when you should run. The truth is, I thought he was my future. And I don't say that lightly. I truly believed he was the person I'd build a home with, share holidays with, maybe even raise children with. His presence in my life felt like a door opening to something beautiful. When you taste a happiness you've never had before, you cling to it. You convince yourself it's real even when it begins to fade. But at the time I didn't feel any fading. At least I didn't think I did. Everything changed 3 months ago. I noticed he became different. Not colder exactly, just distant. Lost in thoughts he wouldn't explain. Sometimes he looked at me with this guilt I didn't understand. Other times he held me so tightly it felt like he was trying to memorize me. My best friend Sarah saw it immediately. She has this talent for reading people in ways I can't. One afternoon while we were baking cookies in my tiny kitchen, she said, "Em, are you sure he's okay?" I shrugged. Of course I was sure. Or thought I was. People get stressed, I answered. She didn't seem convinced. But at the time, I refused to entertain the idea that something might be wrong. I didn't want to poke holes in the perfect world I had built. Maybe subconsciously I already felt it slipping, and denial was my way of clinging to a fantasy. Then came the day that ruined everything. 2 weeks before his proposal, or the proposal he didn't give me, Daniel became strangely attentive again. He brought me flowers for no reason. He took me to my favorite restaurant. He held my hand constantly. He even cooked dinner at my apartment twice, humming softly as if nothing in the world was wrong. I thought he'd come back to himself, that the distance was just a passing cloud. I didn't know that this was the calm before the storm. One night, as we were walking along the waterfront, he stopped and looked at me with this expression I couldn't decipher. A strange mix of longing and sadness. "I need to tell you something soon," he murmured. My heart tightened. But before I could ask, he squeezed my hand and added, "Not today. Just give me a little time." That should have terrified me. But instead, my heart decided to twist those words into something hopeful. Something romantic. I told myself he was planning something big, something life-changing. I even told Sarah, laughing, "I think he's going to propose." She didn't laugh back. In the days following that conversation, everything I saw felt like a sign. The way he looked at me, the way he held me, the way he touched my face like he was memorizing each detail. I built an entire world out of those moments. A world that didn't exist. I should have questioned the odd times he disappeared for a few hours, or why he sometimes changed plans last minute. But instead, I spent those hours imagining the perfect proposal. Would he do it at the cafe where we had our first date? The park bench where he kissed me for the first time? Would he kneel? Would he cry? Would he tell me he couldn't imagine life without me? The morning everything shattered, I woke up with this warm certainty in my chest. I don't know how to explain it. Some days the heart whispers things you're not ready to hear, even when they're lies. I dressed in a soft pastel dress that made me feel delicate and pretty. I curled my hair. I did my makeup slowly, telling myself to breathe, to stay calm, to not expect anything, even though I was expecting everything. He had texted me earlier saying he wanted to meet in the evening because he had something important to talk about. My pulse raced all day. I couldn't focus on anything. Even eating felt impossible. But before I met with him, something strange happened. Something I still replay in my mind like a puzzle I can't solve. I was grabbing coffee, trying to keep my nerves under control, when I saw a familiar silhouette across the street. Daniel. With a woman. A beautiful woman with long dark hair and a navy blue coat. They were talking closely. Too closely. His hand brushed hers. She laughed softly, touching his arm. My heart froze. For a moment, the world felt silent. The coffee shop noise blurred into nothing. All I could hear was the dull thud of my own pulse. I blinked, convinced my mind was playing tricks. But it wasn't. They were there. Real. Together. I stepped outside, but I didn't call his name. I didn't move toward them. Something inside me felt nailed to the ground. The woman looked familiar, but I couldn't place her immediately. And then it hit me, Claire. I had seen her picture once on Daniel's social media. A friend from his past. At least that's what he had said. I watched them for maybe 20 seconds, though it felt like hours. Then he hugged her. Not a friendly hug. A slow, intimate hug with his chin resting on her hair. She squeezed his jacket like she had done it 1,000 times. That was the moment something inside me cracked. He didn't see me. Or maybe he did and pretended he didn't. I don't know which option hurts more. Instead of confronting them, I turned and walked away. My legs shook with every step. I felt like I was floating outside my own body. When I got home, I sat on the floor near my bed and stared at the wall for almost an hour. My phone buzzed several times, messages from Daniel. My heart beat so fast I felt sick. I opened them with trembling hands. He wrote, "Can't wait to see you later. I'll pick you up at 7. I felt nauseous. I didn't reply. At 6:45 he called. I let it ring. At 7:10 he called again. My whole chest felt tight. Sarah kept messaging me, asking if I was okay, but I couldn't type back. At 7:30 he called a third time and I finally answered. Are you ready? His voice sounded light, hopeful, like everything was normal. I can't meet tonight, I whispered, trying not to let my voice crack. He paused. Are you okay? You sound upset. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't ask him about Claire without sounding broken, without exposing the wound that had just opened. I'm just tired, I lied. There was another pause, a long one. Can I come over? I panicked. No, I just want to rest. He hesitated, then finally agreed. Okay, but I need to talk to you soon. It's important. After we hung up, I felt tears spill down my cheeks. I cried quietly, trying to make sense of the storm inside me. A part of me still wanted to believe there was an explanation. Another part already knew the truth. The next morning, I woke up early, still dizzy from the emotional exhaustion. Something inside me told me to check my phone. I opened social media, scrolling mindlessly, until I saw a post that made my stomach flip. It was a picture of Daniel and Claire at a fancy restaurant. She was wearing the same navy blue coat, and on her finger there was a ring, a diamond ring that sparkled under the dim lights. The caption read, "She said yes." My whole body went cold. First, I thought it was a joke, a misunderstanding, something else, anything else. I clicked the comments. Everyone was congratulating them. Heart emojis, excited messages, old friends tagging each other. I felt the air leave my lungs. My hands began to shake uncontrollably. I dropped my phone on my bed and covered my mouth with both hands to stop the sobs from escaping. But they came anyway, loud, ragged, painful sobs that ripped through me like I was breaking from the inside. He proposed. He actually proposed. But not to me. Not to me. I don't remember standing up, but suddenly I was pacing my room, grabbing tissues, wiping my face, cursing myself for being such a fool. How had I not seen it? How had he been with me, holding me, touching me, laughing with me, while planning a proposal to someone else? I felt sick, betrayed, humiliated, and above all, disposable. Sarah rushed to my apartment the moment I told her what happened. She held me while I cried until my chest hurt too much to continue. I remember saying over and over, "Why wasn't I enough?" And she kept whispering, "This isn't about you. He's the one who's broken." But it didn't feel that way. It felt like the universe had taken my heart between its fingers and crushed it for sport. That whole day is a blur. Me curled on the couch under a blanket, crying until my throat felt raw. Sarah bringing me water. My phone lighting up with calls from Daniel. I didn't answer. Not once. But he didn't stop. He called again the next morning. And the next. He texted me paragraphs I didn't have the strength to read. I wanted answers, but I also wanted to disappear. On the fourth day, I picked up his call without meaning to. My finger slipped on the screen. The moment I heard his voice, something inside me tightened painfully. Thank God. Please, can we talk? I've been so worried. I didn't speak. After a second, he said, "I need to explain." And I whispered, "Explain what?" "That you proposed to someone else? That you made me believe you loved me." He inhaled sharply. It's not what you think." But I hung up before he could say another word. Because how could there be any explanation that didn't break me further? And yet, deep down, a part of me still needed to hear every truth, no matter how ugly. Not for closure, but because wounds that aren't understood never really stop bleeding. That was when I realized something. This story wasn't over. Not yet. I didn't sleep for days after hanging up on him. My mind kept replaying the same images. Daniel's soft smile, the warmth of his hands, the way he used to say my name like it meant something. And then those images blurred into the new ones. The ring on Claire's finger. Their picture together. The congratulatory comments beneath it. It felt like someone had taken a knife and carved two different realities into my chest. The one I thought I lived in, and the one I had been living in all along. By the fifth day, I wasn't crying anymore. I had moved past the stage of tears into something colder, heavier, almost numb. It's strange how pain can grow quiet when it gets too large to fit inside you. You don't feel less. You just feel differently, like your heart is underwater and everything around you echoes. Sarah kept urging me to confront him. "You need to hear what he has to say," she insisted as she sat beside me on my couch, her voice soft but firm. "Even if it's awful, even if it hurts, you deserve answers." I knew she was right, but I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to hear him lie again. Or worse, tell the truth. But something in me shifted that night. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the quiet realization that avoiding him wasn't going to stop the bleeding. I needed to know why. I needed to hear it from his mouth, no matter how much it destroyed what was left of me. So the next morning when my phone rang again, I answered. His voice came through instantly, shaken with emotion. Thank you. Thank you for picking up. Please just let me talk." I didn't say anything. I just waited. "Can I come over?" he asked. "Please. I need to see you." My throat tightened. Seeing him felt dangerous. But avoiding him had torn me apart enough. "Come," I whispered, barely audible. He arrived 20 minutes later. When he knocked on my door, I froze. For a full 10 seconds, I stood there with my hand hovering over the doorknob, unable to breathe. When I finally opened it, our eyes met, and I felt everything at once. Love, hate, hurt, longing, betrayal, all tangled together in a storm that made it hard to stand upright. He looked terrible. His hair was messy. His eyes were swollen and red like he hadn't slept. He stepped inside slowly, as if afraid I would change my mind, and shut the door in his face. He breathed, voice cracking. I backed away from him. "Sit," I said, pointing to the chair across the room. I stayed standing. He lowered himself into the seat, shoulders collapsing like he was carrying something enormous. For a moment he didn't speak. He just stared at his hands, twisting them together. I hated how familiar that gesture was. I hated how much I still loved him despite everything. Finally, he lifted his head. "I owe you the truth," he said quietly. "All of it." I crossed my arms, bracing myself. "Then tell me, why her? Why now? Why did you do this to me?" He swallowed hard. His eyes glistened. "Because I thought I could outrun my past. But I couldn't." I frowned. "Daniel, what does that even mean?" He inhaled shakily, then exhaled as if the words physically weighed something. "Claire and I, we weren't over. Not really. I mean, we were officially, but not emotionally. We were together for 5 years. I thought we were done after a huge fight last year. She moved out. We stopped talking. And then I met you." He looked at me with this deep, aching sadness that made me want to scream. "You were like a breath of air after drowning for months," he continued. "You made me feel alive again, hopeful. I didn't plan to fall for you, Em. But I did. Hard." My heart stuttered painfully at those words. "But Claire came back," he said. "Not long after you and I got serious. She showed up at my door crying. She said she made a mistake. She said she wanted to fix things. And I didn't know what to do." I stared at him in disbelief. "So you kept both of us? Is that it?" He squeezed his eyes shut, shame twisting his expression. "I told her it was too late. That I was seeing someone. That I cared about you. But she didn't accept it. She kept coming back. She talked to my parents, my brother, even my closest friends. You don't understand, we were practically family. Everyone expected us to end up together. Everyone. And what about me?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Did I matter at all?" His head snapped up, eyes desperate. "You mattered more than anything. That's why I panicked. I was so afraid of choosing wrong again. I was terrified of hurting you. I didn't want to lead you on. But whenever I tried to talk to you, you looked at me with so much trust. Trust one didn't deserve." I felt tears spill down my cheeks. I didn't wipe them. He continued. "Claire gave me an ultimatum 3 weeks ago. She said if I didn't commit to working things out with her, she'd leave for good and cut me out of her life permanently. And my family, God, they pressured me too. They told me I owed her another chance after everything we'd been through." "So you proposed to her because of pressure?" I asked, my voice hollow. He hesitated. That hesitation hurt more than any answer. "No," he finally whispered. "I proposed because part of me still loved her. Or maybe I loved the idea of her. The history. The comfort. I don't know. I thought I was doing the responsible thing. The expected thing." "And what about me, Daniel?" I demanded. "What was I? A distraction? A temporary warmth? A placeholder until she came back?" "No," he said firmly, standing up. "You were real. Everything with you was real." I shook my head. "If it was real, you wouldn't have asked someone else to marry you." He froze as though the words were ice shards burying into his skin. "Em, I didn't want to hurt you," he said weakly. "But you did," I replied. "You broke me." Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. He took a step toward me, but I stepped back. "Don't," I said. "Please," he begged. "Let me fix this. I'll end things with Claire. I swear. I realized too late that I made the wrong choice." I stared at him with a mixture of love and disgust. "No," I said softly, my voice trembling. "You realized too late that you lost control of the situation. You didn't choose me when it mattered." The truth sat heavy in the room. He wiped his eyes. "I'm sorry, Em. I'm so sorry." "I know," I whispered. "But sorry doesn't undo anything." He looked at me for a long time, his eyes searching mine for forgiveness that wasn't there anymore. Finally, he nodded slowly, like a man who understood that he had destroyed the only thing that could have saved him. When he left, I collapsed onto the floor. Not because I regretted what I said, but because loving someone doesn't vanish the moment they break your heart. It dissolves slowly, painfully, like glass turning back into sand. In the days that followed, I tried rebuilding myself piece by piece. I went on long walks. I journaled. I talked to Sarah until her voice practically lived in my apartment. Healing wasn't linear. Some mornings I woke up feeling almost whole. Others felt like someone had scraped the inside of my chest raw again. But slowly I began to understand something. The pain didn't mean I was weak. The pain meant I had loved deeply, fearlessly, truthfully. And that kind of love is never wasted, even when it isn't returned. Weeks later, I saw Daniel again by accident. I was at the grocery store picking up fruit when he walked in with Claire beside him. They both froze when they saw me. Claire's engagement ring sparkled under the fluorescent lights like a cruel reminder of everything lost. Daniel looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher: regret, longing, guilt. Claire, however, looked at me with something like fear. Not anger, not superiority, fear. I realized then that she knew. She knew that a part of him had belonged to me in a way she could never reach. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Sometimes silence is the loudest truth. When they left the store, I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The knot inside my chest loosened. Not because seeing them didn't hurt, it did. But because the hurt no longer defined me. I walked home that day with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in months. Maybe love had broken me, but I was still standing, still breathing, still here. And that meant something. The more time passed, the more I realized that losing Daniel wasn't the tragedy I thought it was. The real tragedy would have been staying with someone who didn't choose me, who wasn't brave enough to fight for me, who couldn't separate comfort from love. Now, when I think about him, it's with a strange mixture of sadness and gratitude. Sadness because he hurt me. Gratitude because losing him forced me to find myself again. And maybe one day I'll find someone who chooses me without hesitation. Who sees me as the only option, not one option among many. But for now, healing is enough. And for the first time in a long time, I believe I'm enough too. Sometimes I still catch myself remembering the way Daniel used to smile at me, or the way he squeezed my hand when he was nervous. And it hurts in a soft, distant way, like touching a bruise that's almost gone. But healing isn't forgetting. It's understanding. I understand now that love isn't proven by grand gestures or pretty promises. It's proven in choices. And even though he didn't choose me, I'm finally choosing myself. Maybe that's the real proposal I needed all along. The promise to never settle for half of someone again. And this time, I said yes.